Good evening, all. Welcome back. And it's good to see all of you back again for the last and the fourth session that we have, a series of 4 sessions on family therapy. It was nice to see that all of you were so interactive and participative in whatever we have done so far. Today, what we are going to look at is understanding the dynamics of family therapy. So we have Dr. Tanya with us. Dr. Tanya has done her PhD from NIMHANS. Her PhD work was on working with parents of children who have been referred to family therapy. So her work has been very intensive in that way, and she has also done her MPhil in psychiatric social work from NIMHANS. She was the first rank in her batch, and she's also done her MSW from Karve Institute from Pune, and even there she has been a rank holder. Current work is Dr. Tanya is working as a freelancer and as a marital and family therapist. And she's also been associated with UNICEF on an immense project. The title of the project is Specialized Mental Health and Psychosocial Care for Children Affected with COVID-19. And Dr. Tanya has also been posted as a psychiatric social worker in NIMHANS. She has also had other working experience as school counselor and guest faculty in Delhi University. Her areas of expertise is conducting marital and family therapy sessions and supervision in the same area, and also conducting workshops in family and marital therapy. Dr. Tanya, thank you so much for being our speaker today, and we would love to hear more from you. Over to you, Dr. Tanya.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming for this session. Thank you, Dr. Shobita, and the Institute for allowing me this opportunity to be able to address so many budding mental health professionals. And it's especially a pleasure because Dr. Shobita and I, we have know each other for a really long time. So it's a very it's somewhere coming from my heart to be doing this. So and teaching family therapy is always, I think both of us love it a lot. And so this is the last day. And how I visualize it is, I understand that all of you have been very keen participant for the last 3 sessions, and you have kind of slowly built it up and understood what is family therapy. Today we are going to kind of look at how we in practice understand how interventions are, how do we understand what dynamics are happening in the family. In the process, like the title says, we are going to look at case stories. So I'd like all of you to be very participatory, but at the same time please take turns. I think Dr. Shobita will be moderating the the chat boxes of what questions are being asked. Please do not unmute and ask questions while the presentation is going on. After every of one chunk of things being told, I will stop for queries and discussions. Please send in your queries around that time. As we know that the online forum doesn't allow us to have a lot of talk face to face and discussions, and we have to heavily base ourselves on PPTs and materials that we can also see on our computer screen. So what I'll do is I'll start off with the the material of what we are going to do now, and in between we will stop in for having our discussions. All right, so just give me a moment for me to share the screen and put on the PPT. So I kindly request all of you not to put up things on the chat box or unmute while the presentation is going on. You can do that once I open the forum for discussion. So as you know, today's topic is understanding the family dynamics, and it's a case study approach that we are going to take, because we understand things best once we hear what happens in practice in the therapy room. So to start off with, what is family dynamics? Let us start understanding that. What do we kind of mean by family dynamics? So we understand the family dynamics through case stories. We will try and understand that. All right. what is family dynamics now? If you have, remember the last three presentations where we had, kind of talked of circularity, we had talked of looking at genograms, we had talked of looking at the family from, various perspective. Today I'm going to bring in new, or maybe you have heard these terms in the last three presentations, but we are going to talk a little bit crisply about this, because to understand family dynamics we need to talk in these terms. We will not talk about people, but we'll talk about what roles, communications, boundaries, these are the terms that we use. So there are two things: there is a family structure and there's a family functioning. Okay, structure is more like, in a house, how we have a structure, that a house is built, either it's a two-story or a three-story or a very small house. The same way, a family has a structure. It is built on people. There will be parents, there will be children, or there will be grandparents, uncles, aunts, so who are the supra systems. Okay, so all of these things talk about what is the structure. In structure, like I said, there are subsystems. There is a current life cycle, which I think you have done, the boundaries, alliances, power hierarchy, and decision making. I will explain all these terms in details. Don't freak out right now. Family functioning is what the family does, okay, between themselves. So there are roles, there is communication, there is reinforcement, there is cohesion, adaptive patterns, and social support. So these are the headings under which we try and define family dynamics, describe family dynamics. All right. So these are the terms that we use to say what is happening in a family, what is pathological, what is not. Now let us look at each of these terms in a little bit, detailed manner. So the first thing is the family structure. As you could see in the last slide, I had that. So what is a family structure? There will be subsystems. I think you had already seen this in Shobita ma'am's presentation, that there will be couple, which is the, husband and the wife. Then there will be a parental subsystem, which is the father, mother, and the children. And then there will be a children or a sibling subsystem, which means that if there are more than one child in the family, the siblings themselves will form a bond together. So these are the ways people bond in the family, that they can bond as a couple. There's a husband and wife, there are parents and children, and the siblings themselves bond together as a separate subsystem, means it's a smaller part of the system. What is supra system? Supra system is outside this family of parents and children. So uncles, aunts, grandparents, all of these become the supra systems. Boundaries are like a wall. Okay, if I were to ask you, what does the wall around the house help you with? All of you, I'm sure, will say to keep the house protected, so that people cannot, come in and out of the house, strangers don't come in and out. You have a boundary wall. Now, if you clearly think about it, if the wall is completely closed, neither you, neither anyone can come in or out. So the house has no purpose if you close the wall so tightly shut that there is no door or gate to the house. Whereas if you don't have any wall, anybody can come into the house, take anything, and go. It's the same concept of boundary in a family, that there are some rules that guide the family in their interaction about what might happen within the family, what should happen outside the family. All right. So this boundary wall that is around every family decides that what kind of discussions we can do with people who are outside the supra system, what kind of discussion stays within, inside, that is the subsystems. All right. Example of, boundary would be that a parent will not be discussing about their intimate lives or their physical relationship in front of their children. That is a boundary that the parent might have, that, they would not be openly discussing about their physical relationship in front of their children or in front of the outside world. So it is like a rule that, what kind of interactions happen inside the house, what kind of interactions happen outside the house, outside the family. All right. So when I say house, which is the family, okay, so it the boundary kind of guides those things. Now, what are alliances? Alliances are basically joining together which are healthy. So for example, say there is a younger child who has a learning disability, for example. The parents and the elder child join together and take turns to sit down with this other child to help the child in academics. Now that's an alliance. It's a healthy thing to do where the parent, the father and the child, or the father and the mother comes together to help the younger child being able to achieve the academic goals. Whereas, so alliance as a word, it is healthy. It's good to have alliances in families. Whereas coalitions, which are unhealthy, which means that, when two people come together to oppose one member, most of the time, where do we hear the word coalition? We hear that in parliament or in political parties, no, where, two parties come together to oppose someone. The same way in a family also, when two people come together to oppose another member constantly, to say that you are wrong and we are right, that is a coalition. So there can be a triangulation, which means the parent and child can come together towards another parent, or it is also possible that both parents come together against the child. So there can be a triangulation, which is a kind of coalition. Now there can be various sets of coalition in the large family. So if you have a very large family, you might have different kinds of coalitions in the family. So this is about family structure. This is the words or the ways we define what happens in the family structure. Now, the next part of the structure is leadership. Who is the leader in the family? Is it gender specific? Is it that the male members are the leader, or is it authority specific? For example, whoever is the elderly in the family holds the power position. How is it accepted in the family? Have everybody accepted this power structure? Is it only for namesake, which is nominal, that just for namesake it is said that the father is the leader, but actually all the decisions are made by the say the grandmother? Maybe then the father is a namesake leader, but the functional head of the family is the grandmother. Okay, so we understand leaderships with these kind of things. How is the decision making in the family? Do everybody participate? Is it implemented? Is it autocratic or democratic, or is it chaotic, authoritarian? What is the kind of decision making in the family? We need to understand that. Okay, so that is the way we understand how people are making decisions. We need to ask questions around that to understand. Now, roles. Who takes which kind of roles? How do they perform these roles? Who helps others in doing these kind of roles? Is there a problem in performing these roles? So, trying and understanding that if there is a father, a mother, a child, or a uncle or an aunt, who is doing which kind of roles? Are they helping each other out in being able to do these roles, or are they coming in conflict where everybody is doing the same thing? So say for example, there is grandparents and the parent in the house, all of them are trying to parent the child. All right, so there's multiplication of roles, so everybody is trying to do the same thing. Or whether there is no one to perform one role, that it is necessary, but nobody is kind of saying that we will do that. Okay, so is there a problem in that nobody is wanting to take up that kind of a role in the family? What is the instrumental role, which is the role of the provider, that who provides? What is the expressive role? Who is the one who is mediating? Who is the one who is the reconciliator in the family? Most of the time in traditional families, you will understand these two terms in the sense that maybe the person who is the male member is the instrumental provider, who is the breadwinner of the family, is one word that we use, no, breadwinner. Whereas expressive roles are mostly taken up by women or the mother in the family, who will be the mediator or the reconciliator, the one who provides the emotional support. All right, so to understand families, we need to understand these aspects, that who is doing what. Next, I come to the functioning of the family, that's communication, channel of communication, which means who talks to whom and how do they talk. Okay, so we need to understand that about the family, that who is talking with whom and how are they talking. Is it direct? Are people talking directly? Sometimes fights are also direct talking. Okay, so even when people are fighting out loudly, they might be talking directly to each other, but obviously that's an unhealthy way of talking. But is it direct? Is it indirect? Which means nobody is speaking directly with each other, they're passing the communication through someone else. All right, that is something that we call a switchboard, that they're passing the um, content of what they want to say through someone. For example, say the child is very scared of the father. The child asks the mother to pass on the thing that I need some money to buy something, or to go to my friend's party, I need some money. The mother in turn goes and tells the father that he needs some money to go to his friend's party. The father gives the money to the mother. The mother comes and passes the money on to the child. So this would be an indirect example of a switchboard kind of a communication, whether it's going through someone else. Now, how are the noise levels in the house? When are the people talking very loudly? Do they start screaming and shouting the moment they come into conflict? Or is there a low threshold of noise level where people fall silent? Maybe one continuum of it, that where nobody is talking to each other, versus very low levels of noise. How other people communicating is this. Now, what about effective communication? Effective, the word means emotional communication. So are people communicating about love, their joy, their happiness? Are they talking about their welfare? These are the emotions that show welfare, that I like you, I care for you, I care for my family. So I belong to this family. So these are welfare communications of emotions of love, joy, togetherness, happiness, and all of that. Or is it only emergency, that I am only people only communicate when they're fearful, they only communicate when they're angry, or not only communicate then, but communicate only these things, that when they're fearful, when they're angry, they communicate those things. So then we will say they're only having emergency effective communication. Emotions are being shown, but these are emergency emotions. Or it is also possible that people only communicate when there's a need. Otherwise, there is no communication at all. Only when they need something from each other, they will communicate. For example, say if a couple has marital discord, they might not be talking to each other at all, but they might only communicate with each other when they have to buy something together for the house, or when the child's school fees have to be paid. Then they will communicate saying that 15th is the last date, we have to pay before that. But other than that, there is no other regular communication that happens. Only if there's a need to run the family, then only the couple communicates. So we have to understand this variety of what happens in communication itself. It's a vast area, and like we have said that family therapy works mostly on communication. So it's a very important area to assess that how other people communicate. Now, talking of reinforcement, it's the similar things that in psychology, that we call reinforcement, whether it's positive, negative, which is avoidant, or whether there's punishment. What are the social behaviors? How do you understand this are the social behaviors which are connected to these kind of. Now, reinforcement can be verbal, can be non-verbal, can be material. I'll tell you, a verbal reinforcement of punishment may be somebody shouting on someone very loudly, or calling out names, bad names. Punishment, we know, is to do with children, but how do adults punish each other? It's possible that they shout on each other, or they call bad names and all of that. That's also a verbal punishment, no? That you're kind of putting someone down. A non-verbal punishment can be storming out of the house. If somebody just bangs door and storms out of the house, the person hasn't spoken anything, but the person has done something that shows that I really didn't like what you did and you suffer now, kind of a thing. Material punishments or material reinforcements can also be there. Same way, verbal, non-verbal material can be positive also. Somebody can positively verbally say that I liked what you did. Non-verbally, they can hug or give a pat. Reinforcements can be for smaller children, where somebody gifts something or gives something to the child, or even adults use a lot of material reinforcements for each other also. What we need to understand in family therapy is that these reinforcements are bidirectional, which means that I will be reinforcing my partner, and my partner will also reinforce me. I will be reinforcing my child will also reinforce me. So both the things are happening at the same time. Okay, so there's a bidirectionality to it. Now, cohesion. What is cohesion? Nothing but we feeling, okay? The sense of feeling together in the family. Now, a very strong sense of sensitivity towards who is feeling what in the family is enmeshment, which is the absolute one corner of it. That people are way too sensitive about each other's emotions, and therefore they go into fights and breakdowns and all of that. Whereas the other extreme of it is disengaged, where people are not engaged with each other at all, nothing bothers them, kind of a thing. In between there is healthy connectedness and healthy separatedness. Now, the lot of commitment and intimacy in families lie on this continuum, that how cohesive are we, where do we land, are we too sensitive, are we more or less sensitive but okay, are we, do we like being a little more by ourselves but we come together as a family, or are we completely detached from each other? Now there are some symbolic rituals that the families might do. Something that is very typical that most families do is they sit together to eat their own food, or they have some religious, or spiritual, kind of rituals that they do regularly. But rituals can extend beyond that. Anything that is enjoyable by the family and therefore they repeat is a ritual. So what kind of rituals and build cohesiveness and what is present in the family needs to be explored. All right, for example, one of my couple had said that they had a ritual of playing a game of card. After dinner they would, play that for half an hour and then only they will go to sleep. So that was a ritual for them because both of them enjoyed that and they made sure that they did it every day. All right, so that's a family ritual that people feel more close or feel people like doing. Now adaptive patterns, which is the problem solving ability of the you know of the family. How well do they solve their problems, how well do they cope up with their situation? Sometimes people might have a poor problem solving ability. Same way about social support, whether the immediate family is present or not, do they help out? What about secondary social support, which are relatives, friends, neighbors? What about tertiary social support, which is hospitals, agencies, religious bodies? Whether these things are present or not. So, based on this, we kind of do our family assessment. All right. So, now I will stop for some time and allow some questions to be asked, maybe just two or three, to understand that whether somebody wants any of these points to be reclarified. You can unmute and talk, or you can put it in the chat box. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. um, so I will be continuing with the case stories now. Okay, so I've covered the pointers under which we need to talk about the family dynamics. So now let's go ahead and see the case stories. So the first case, so what I would want here is a little bit of discussion. I please request some of you to kind of unmute and talk when I ask some of the questions. So let's first read the case story. Say Mr. A is 46-year-old, Mrs. S is 40 years old, and they have two children, a girl of 16 years and a boy of 12 years old. The family hails from urban Karnataka district and is staying with a relative in Bangalore. The girl was good in academics until recently. She has met a boy in college and is in a romantic relationship. The family has opposed such a relationship and the couple eloped. They were found by police and beaten up in public. No legal cases lodged, however. The girl was suicidal and had been diagnosed to have depression. Parents have come to family therapists to correct the girl and forget the boy. History reveals that the father has been very strict and mother could not focus on the girl after birth of a brother. The family has left their hometown due to stigma and father is experiencing job loss. So they plan to marry the girl with a rich relative uncle after therapy and then they go back to their hometown. The girl reported that if she has no options, she would maybe want to commit suicide if this happens. Okay. So now in this case story, can we have a little bit of, question? What are your first thoughts when you hear this case story? Can anybody who has read this would like to say something?
Tanya,
Yeah.
while we are waiting for someone to ask the question,
Mm-hmm.
there is someone who was asked to expand a little bit on the bi-directional reinforcement.
Okay, okay, all right. So the bidirectional reinforcement is basically, say for example, I'll give you a very small example, okay? Something that you know day to day. Say you give a child a child hugs you back, okay? So one is that you are reinforcing the child by giving a positive reinforcement, that you know you are hugging the child to say that you know I love you, or you have done a good job. But the child is also hugging you back, right? What does that make you feel? You feel happy that the child is hugging you back. You feel that okay, I am also doing something good in my parenting, and therefore my child is showing affection, right? So that's the bidirectionality in reinforcement, that the parent also feels reinforcement, or reinforce that my parenting is on the right track. I'm doing the right thing by doing these things with my child. The child also feels reinforced that I am also doing the right things, and therefore my parents are appreciating me. Okay, so that's a very simple example of how there's a bi-directional reinforcement in the family. Same way I would tell you that you know if we have to look at you know negative reinforcement. Say for example, it's basically to avoid, right? um, Say there's a fight, or there is some conflict that has been there in a couple, and to avoid the conflict, one both the partners you know do different things, or they don't come back home at the same time, or they work very late and they come back home very late. So it's a negative reinforcement, because in their attempt to avoid conflict, they're increasing their individual time. Okay, they're increasing time spent by themselves outside the house. Okay, so if both of them are doing that, both of them are kind of you know reinforcing each other, that spending time together is unhealthy, and therefore you know we should continue this way. So each partner kind of reinforces each other. That's the idea of bidirectionality. Now I have got some responses on this case story. Let me just kind of read those out. Somebody says there's an authoritarian decision making, it's a neglected girl in the family, there are boundary conflicts. Somebody else again saying neglect. uh, a heart crushing story of dysfunctional family dynamics, surely it is. Communication limited between members. Another person also agrees that it's a poor communication. Somebody says avoiding communication, right? Somebody also says that I don't think she should be forced into marriage. Neglected child, correct. So if you could now, if I were to talk in the terms of you know dynamics, now somebody said by boundary, right? So as you could see that the boundary you know over here is we don't know really, but then it seems like there are diffuse boundaries. The child is not close to the parents, but they're close to you know the child is close to somebody else. Okay, some other comments are relationship issues within the family, lack of healthy relationship. The girl seeks it outside. Yes, I was just telling this point that she is looking at it, seeking it outside. When restricted about the same, the girl feels helpless and goes into depression. Loss of job and stigma increases the issues in the family, making the girl feel more worthless and guilty and depressed. Correct. Um, and somebody else says romantic relationship at that age is typical, but the response of the family is problematic. And they're also saying that somebody else is saying this is how parents typically respond. So as we can see that you know okay Okay. So somebody is again saying if the father is not strict, she will be feeling free to talk. So as you can already see that we are talking in terms of not just the girl's behavior. I'm very happy that we are talking about everyone over here. We are talking about the father, the mother, the child. We're talking about everybody in this situation. So as you could see that the girl, maybe the effective communication in this family has been low. The girl might not have felt or seen a lot of love and affection going her way, and like you know all of you are saying, she might have felt neglected somewhere down the line, because all of that has gone towards her brother, and therefore she might have been seeking it out as adolescents do, which is a very normative you know life phase for an adolescent to seek it outside the family. Now family's response have been how, like, somebody said the power structure might have been authoritative, and therefore the family had, come down on the girl and the boy very rigidly. And that shows the power structure in the family, where, there has been a lot of, so beating someone up publicly and all of this is a very punitive sort of punishment given, meted out to the child. So here reinforcement also, as you can see, is very harsh. Now that the girl is, depressed, and she is now suicidal, the family is also getting reinforced. As you could see, the family has come to us only because the child is threatening suicide. If the child was not depressed or not suicidal, they might not have felt any need to do anything about this whole issue. They would have married her off. Because the child is now depressed and, expressing the need to commit suicide, that is when the family is also reinforced to make some changes. Okay, so that is where the reinforcement is working. Role wise also, if you see that the parents are, not, maybe the that instrumental roles are being performed, but the effective role, that I say, that the mediator or that role is kind of less over here. Cohesiveness, again, I do feel that this family is cohesive. They are not disengaged, otherwise they would not have bothered so much. But definitely, the cohesiveness is unhealthy in this family, the way they are, kind of, what about problem solving? Definitely problem solving is again poor in this family, right? So as you could see that we are talking in terms of, these terms, the terms that we were talking of, and we can understand the family dynamics. Yes, emotional attachment is missing. So as you could see that you can put this in, in the domains that we had spoken about. Okay, so this is about one case. I'll come to what we have done for these cases. Let's move on to another one, because only when we, kind of talk about these cases do we understand, how we are looking at it. Okay. um, Another case, say, and I have put a variety of cases so that you understand that family therapy is done for different age groups, different kind of problems. It's not the same kind of problems that come. Okay, variety of problems come in. So please let us read this case story. So there is Mrs. T, who is 70 years old female. She is widowed, lives with her son in Bangalore, hails from Kolkata. She has been living all through in her native place, which is Kolkata, until her husband passed away. Now her brother and her relatives kind of eventually took her property away. Okay, and her relationship therefore deteriorated with them, and because they are her neighbors. So she began to have depression and some strange behaviors. Her son, who is through and through, kind of situated in Bangalore, brought her to Bangalore for treatment and caregiving. Basically, he felt that, his mother cannot go on staying there all by herself, so he got her here. But a root shock that, happened for the whole family is that continues to feel lonely. They didn't expect that to happen. They thought that she will feel really good that she's now with her family. It's a, big family of husband, wife, two children are there, but she continues to feel lonely, and she constantly asks for a Bengali caretaker, which is not possible in Bangalore. It was her previous maid who used to stay with her in Kolkata. Both son and daughter are working. So, and the children are busy in school. Children are adolescent. In this family, the children were teenagers. So they meet at dinner time. Now at dinner time, she unloads all her worries and negative memories during this time. And all throughout her life, whatever are the negative memories, she goes on talking about only those kind of stories at dinner time and post that. And therefore what happens to the other family, the children and the son and daughter-in-law, is they don't get to speak about anything else. They have to go on listening to this, and after some months this has become unbearable for them. Okay, and now they have also started reacting to this, where the son reacts very badly. He somehow snaps at the mother, talks to her rudely, kind of says that he's not interested to spend time with her and all of that. And the daughter-in-law kind of stays aloof. She stays away from all of these things. All right, so, and the children are also not engaged. So now can we, kind of look at what is happening in this case? Can we have, like, for the last case we had people writing in the chat box, can we have some things to be, what do you feel? Now this is an aging lady, right? She doesn't have her husband. Her life has completely been in a different city. um, what do you think is happening to the whole family? So now if you see, she is one person who is from her family, but a son's family, and she is merged right now. So what's happening? Okay, some people are saying she is lonely, needs some time. Can we look at the whole family? Can we not just look at her as the lady? Can we look at everyone in the dynamics and try and talk about what's happening? Okay, please continue to type in. I will read out what I see on the message. Okay, so somebody says that she's lonely and needs somebody to talk to. She needs love and time. She needs companionship. Somebody says there's poor communication and problem solving in the family. Role change for the adults, very important point, as the other ones are too. This role change is a family structural conflict. She wants attention. Social support is missing. Yeah, so though it's there for namesake, but actually the kind of support that she needs, she's not there. um, okay, so I think there's a overwhelming response that she needs care and love from everyone. Can somebody please also write from the point of view of the son, daughter-in-law and their family, because let us understand that there are many middle, many families who are also stuck in this kind of a, issue where the son, daughter-in-law, let us also think from their side. Everybody is
Uh,
busy then.
Dr. Tanya, there's one response on the other side.
Okay.
As in, one is like more focusing again on the individual person, that
Mm-hmm.
if she needs to be occupied. But
Mm-hmm.
there's one more response, which is the family has to tend to the adult, which they
Mm-hmm.
were not used to.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, again, the family has to find a way to communicate and involve everyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These are other responses. And here there's one more where the mother has zero emotional support and family doesn't seem to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is busy in their own lives. No one is investing time in family.
Mm-hmm.
Effective communication is poor. Poor
Mm-hmm.
coping strategies and low problem solving abilities.
Right, right. I'm so happy that people are starting to use the words. I'm very happy that please do that. You start whatever the dynamics, the words that we learned. Let's start using those problem solving, coping, communication. Good that all of you are using that. So yeah. So like some people said that they okay. Somebody wrote a detailed this thing. Let me read that out because
She's
just
lonely and old. People tend to have an attachment
yeah,
to the
yeah.
place where they spend the majority of their life. She
Mm-hmm.
wants to lay down her worry, but since the rest of the family is working, coming home tired, they don't have time to listen to her problem. They
Mm-hmm.
feel she's pulling them down, but just wants someone for her past to support her.
Yeah. So I think that's a very neutral view to the whole situation, that there's both ways to the story, that they are also running their house. There somebody said running their house, providing for children, they're doing their own work. The fact that they can take care of so the intentions were in the right place. Don't forget that the son did bring her over here, and that's rightfully, she should also get care, and they are also providing that. So I think the intention was all in the right place, but somehow the practically to be able to do this is difficult. And I think, like Shobita mentioned from somebody's comment, that this is a new thing to do, to take care of an adult. Maybe they are attuned to taking care of children, and their life moves around a certain pace and a certain routine of taking care of the child. But what if an adult comes in? Are they kind of being able to take care of that?
But
And
there's also one more response, Tanya.
hmm,
Low
hmm,
problem
yeah.
solving, effective communication has to happen. Instead of reacting, the son should
Mm-hmm.
communicate
Mm-hmm. Right.
more in terms of effective
Absolutely.
communication.
So definitely. Exactly. So more in terms of effective communication. I think somebody here also mentioned something that I would bring in. They say that they think she's a burden because so far it was a nuclear family. I like that point coming in because maybe, you know, a little bit crisp thought would be that the whole structure of the family has changed right now. Previously, they were a nuclear family of father, mother, and two children. Now they're a joint family because a mother has come in. So that shift from a nuclear to a joint family itself can cause, you know, a lot of these kind of issues. All right. So like everyone said, a lot more effective communication, a lot more, you know, communication of welfare might be required in this family to be able to overcome these kind of issues. All right. So we would see that practically what we did. And again, we can do a lot of different ways of, you know, handling a same case. Okay, so just because after some time I'll put up what we actually did in the clinic doesn't mean that's the only way to do it, but I'll do that anyways for you all to know. Let's move on to case 3. Now this is with a small child. Okay, Mr. G, 40-year-old, is working as an office assistant from UP. 36-year-old homemaker, again from UP. They have one boy of 8-year-old who has stopped going to school for the 1 year. Now, this 1 year is not COVID time. This was a 2019, case that came to us. So it was not because of COVID. Parents report that the child had problems with academics and is very adamant. The father blames the mother to be too lenient and yields to whatever the child demands. The mother blames the father that he is autocratic and does not consider anyone's needs. Through history taking, therapist realizes that there is a history of ongoing marital discord, but now it has reduced because the focus is on the child. The mother has left home and gone off to a parent's place twice 2 years back due to these fights with her husband, which is unbearable for her. She returned only when the son had repeatedly been asking for the father. She came back home. So just prior to the child stopping going to school, there had been a period where the mother and the, you know, had left with the child because of very high discord with the father, and the father didn't call the mother back or anything. She came back because the child was not able to handle this situation. Again, can you, you know, kind of put up some things on the, sorry, on the chat box as to what you might be thinking about this? Sorry, I'm going on. Yeah. Show. Yeah.
Yeah, there's triangulation
Power
between mother
structure.
and child.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Power structure is skewed, child has more power.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay.
It's triangular.
Okay. I'm so happy that people are using these terms. Wonderful that you have understood that there's a triangulation. Okay. What else? So that may be in the family structure. Can we have some comments about the power structure? What do you think is happening in the family now?
The child is acting out to get the attention of both the parents.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And breakdown in family structure, coalition between mother and son.
Mother and son. Okay. Yeah, that is becoming very evident. Let's talk of some other things. Dominated and neglected by
By
husband.
husband.
Okay. What about communication? What about cohesion? Problem solving? Can people write some things about that? Conflict
Conflict
resolution is
resolution is
poor.
poor.
Yeah. Okay.
There is no good relationship with husband and wife. It will affect the
Okay.
child.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the child is seeking attention by being adamant. And negative bidirectional reinforcement.
Okay.
The child is taking advantage, disengaged husband.
Husband. Okay.
Very bad coping skill in the family. Power structure is only father wants to control and very poor communication.
Okay. All right. So does anybody else want to add anything else to this? So yeah, so like everybody said, as you could, now let us go as per the thing. So now if you see subsystem wise, there is a couple subsystem which is ill functioning because they have marital discord. Okay, so the subsystem is definitely not functioning very well. Parent child subsystem also doesn't seem to be functioning well. Like somebody said, the powers, the child is holding the power now, so maybe the power structure has also got toppled now. But before, it seemed to be that the father was very autocratic in the family now, but it is not accepted. Again, if you remember, all these words have a meaning. Autocratic father per se is not a problem, but if the mother is not accepted of it, accepting that, or autocratic mother is not a problem if the other partner doesn't complement that. So here the mother is completely opposing that kind of a hierarchy, and therefore the child is using that, the child is kind of manipulating that, and now has kind of got hold of the power in the family through his behaviors of not going to the school. Obviously role whatever is provided is not accepted over here. Communication, again effective communication is not present, because the father is constantly punitive, the father is constantly setting rules for the, so yeah, like somebody said, the child is deprived of the father's love, and maybe the mother is overcompensating that because she also feels the same way. She is, triangulation is present, she is also overcompensating that by providing more and more to the child, material reinforcement, and reinforcing bad behaviors. So there's a positive reinforcement towards bad behaviors. That is what is happening here.
Dr. Tanya, there's one
Yeah.
question here.
Yeah.
Can it be bidirectional reinforcement of power?
Bidirectional reinforcement of power. Uh, yeah, it might be, because if there is the bidirectionality I spoke of, reinforcement, but actually let us understand that everything that happens in the family is bidirectional. There is bidirectional communication, power hierarchy, everything, because in a family it's not one individual. So bidirectional reinforcement of power might also happen, that if somebody is autocratic, or somebody is authoritarian, and somebody else reinforces that, then the person will continue to be autocratic or continue to be authoritarian, no? So yes, you can reinforce power hierarchy also. So that way, this what I think was asked is about feedback. I can relate it to not reinforcement, but how families send feedback to each other, that this is okay, this is not okay, kind of a thing. Yes, so somebody said hostile relationship between the mother and the father. So if you see cohesiveness in this family, they're enmeshed, because whatever the mother does, the father gets really livid about it. Whatever the father does, the mother gets totally dysregulated about it. So yeah, and somebody says the roles are not balanced. Yes, the father and the mother's roles are not balanced. Cohesiveness is very, very enmeshed in this case, and there has been separation, periods of separation. Now this is very important. When the child wanted to come back, then only the family again got integrated. So this is very, very important in this case, that then the child gets the understanding that I have to hold the family together, and a child does not want to leave home and go to school, because the child is holding the family together. So the child has somehow taken an adult role, not a child's role. Okay, so this is the crux of this story, and we will try and see how we have worked on it. But as somebody says, problem solving is very poor in this family also. Everybody is looking at things in a very, very rigid manner. Okay, so that is what we understand. I'll go to another case. This is another age group again. Again, we will try and understand it from the family dynamics. Mr. R is a 24-year-old boy. He has studied architecture and he hails from Delhi. His mother and father stay separately due to severe marital discord, but they are not divorced. They come together for all social functions and portrays an intact family. Okay, so for social family function only they come together. There they all go together as a family, as if they're together. But actually it's very clear within the family, which is between the mother, father and this son, that the parents are not together. They are, they do not want to stay together under the same roof. The child has been always with the mother. The father used to visit the family for around 2 months in a year. Okay, so in a whole 12 months, the father will come in for 2 months, stay at the same time for 2 months, and then go off for the rest 10 months. All the members, so now the boy is 24-year-old, but in assessment they all remember that these moments where the father would come and stay for 2 months in the year will be very tense for everyone. Okay, the father used to feel that he is an outsider, that the mother and the son goes on doing their own things, he is not a part of the family at all. He will go on sitting like an outsider in the house, while the mother and father will continue with their daily routines. the mother and the father, son in turn reports that they felt that he was too intrusive. So it's like a contradictory kind of a statement, that the father felt that he was not allowed in the family at all, but the mother and the son felt that he was constantly trying to be intrusive in their lives, tell them what needs to be done. Okay. So currently the boy is diagnosed with internet addiction and stays in his room all the time. All right. The mother and father now seems to be very cordial. Okay. All these days they were very clear that they have a marital discord, they don't want to be together. Post the fact that he has internet addiction and stays in his room all the time, the mother and father started staying together for longer periods. The father stopped staying where he used to stay. He used to stay near Himachal. He stopped staying and came down to Delhi and started staying with them. And now they're attempting to treat the son. Okay, so they know that they're together to treat the son. He needs help, and they are both together now critical about the boy. So even the mother joins with the father joins with the mother to say the same things about the boy. They're critical. Now the boy abuses the parents verbally. He gets extremely angry. Okay, he gets into rage. Like when we had sessions with him, he just gets into a rage that, you know, he says his mother is like, in Hindi there's a Joru ka gulam. You know, he says that you have become a slave to him. You why have you stopped using your own brains? And he has his bouts of rage when he sees his mother and father together. He also tells his father that you better stay away from all my matters because it's none of your business. All right. So again, remember, he's not a small child. He's a 24-year-old boy, but he has been struggling with his, you know, career and trying to find a job and all of this. This was the situation under which they came into family therapy to us. All right. So again, can we have some, you know, comments about this case? Yeah, let's, the chat box is coming up. All right, lack of cohesion. All right, what else? Is Akanksha's parent okay? So somebody says the father is alienated. There's a coalition against the father. Correct. There's a coalition against the father. But then right now, what do you think the coalition is? Does anybody want to put it on the chat box? That right now, what do you think is the coalition? The parents are enmeshed with the son. Okay. So somebody says the father and mother has a coalition now. Correct. So, Shobita, you were saying something?
Yeah, there's more chats here. The
Yeah.
boy has repressed anger. The young adult is fed up with the masking of his parents.
The young boy is fed up with the.
Masking of his parents.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
So you have
Good.
one more here. It's dysfunctional family. Child has negative impression about the father,
Hmm.
mainly due to the lack of healthy relationship. And the
Hmm.
concepts or image of the father inserted in his mind is from a very young age.
Hmm. Hmm.
He had been
Hmm.
his mother's support from a young age. So
Hmm.
now, when both the parents team up together, he feels angry and rebellious.
Right. So, you know, there was a kind of an impression that was in his mind about the father because, like somebody rightly said, the mother, though she denies it, that the mother has somehow, you know, passed on a certain idea about the father. And it is also true, he has seen his father acting out in, you know, grave anger and acting a certain way with his mother. And being very, very close to his mother throughout the growing years, he has obviously, you know, kind of felt very repelled by this man who would suddenly come home, suddenly go away. You know, there was the idea of fatherhood itself was very, very questionable in this case.
Losing of insecurity of losing mother's love and affection.
Yes, that's
Currently,
wonderful.
yeah, currently parents must be in a meshed relationship, not
Hmm.
thinking logically.
Hmm.
Child has become the identified patient while the patient's dysfunction is ignored.
Absolutely. I think that is a very good point, that now though he's I that's why I again pointed out at the end of the narrative that, remember, he's a 24-year-old boy, but the whole narrative seems like a very small child. No, it seems like a very small child who is fearful that my mother is going to be taken away. So though he's 24, he's stuck at a much slower regressive stage where he is actually fearful that now his mother is going to be taken away by his father, and therefore he gets into this fits of rage where he wants to take his mother away from the father back again. Okay, so you can have a psychodynamic understanding of what is happening over here. And in the family, what is happening is, as you could somebody say that the mother and father has now come together to, kind of form a coalition against him. So that is again maintaining this fear in his mind, or this, core anxiety in his mind that my mother is going to go away. Now, Rekha pointed out something, that authority and autonomy issues. Now, this autonomy, anyways, he is 24, he has to leave home, he has to leave his mother. So the core issue is that, he might be finding it very difficult to leave his mother and become an adult, to, kind of grow into an secure adult who leaves family and moves off. And on top of that, now the mother and father is kind of looks like patching up to him, and therefore, it kind of goes on maintaining. Okay, so that is a very core thing that happened in this situation. Any other chats, Shobita, from the other side? Is there any?
Yes, the
Because
young adult is lonely, never felt connected, and as parents, they never behaved responsible, and parenting what the child saw as temporary phases.
Right. Yeah. So one thing that I didn't mention in this case when I wrote, but then I can share here, is we also found out way later in our therapy that, though it didn't come up in family therapy, that's why I didn't mention it. It came up in individual therapy that the child also had CSA. Repeated CSA during his childhood, which, kind of also um, intensified this whole thing. But then the boy was not at all open to, kind of hasn't spoken about it to anyone. He had spoken it for the first time in therapy. So that work was going on now. So I'll just check with Shobita 1 minute. You had said that 6 o'clock we will stop. Can I quickly show what had happened really in the clinic, like what we had done with the cases? Can I go
Yes,
over
yes,
those slides?
yes,
Okay,
definitely.
then I will take up a more, we'll open up the forum. So, like I said, please remember that there is no one way of doing therapy. I might be doing it in one way, Shobita ma'am might do it in another way, somebody else. Styles will differ, but the formulation more or less remains the same. The techniques and all of that is a blend of, who would, pick up which style of therapy. Okay, but because, today's session is exclusively, what I understood is that, all of you learn how to do family therapy from a case story point of view and understand dynamics. I have put up what very genuinely and authentically what we had done in our clinic. All right, but then there can be more done, there can be done differently, so we will try and see all of that. But I have tried keeping the narrative as close to what we have done in our, work. I've just put that out over here. So I'll go to case one. If you remember, the case one was about the girl who eloped, and was beaten up and then wanted to get her married. So first thing that we focused in our therapy was to stabilize and normalize the family routine. They were in our hospital itself, so we kind of tried getting in some routines that the whole family does together, and get some rituals in place, because if you remember, we said rituals builds cohesiveness. So first of all, we tried to build bond this family, because as some of you had said that the girl might have felt very neglected over time in the family and disconnected. So we tried kind of creating family routines and rituals. And around the same time, we started addressing the distress tolerance and conflict reduction, that we taught the family how to handle anxieties. So sometimes the girl was coming from her own anxiety that my parents are going to marry me with somebody. Sometimes the parents were coming from their own anxieties that this girl is going to commit suicide, or she is going to go away with this boy again if we go back home. That was their biggest fear. Okay, I think more than suicide, they were worried that this girl is going to go away with the boy and marry him. So we taught the parents to handle this distress, these distressing thoughts, and how to reduce conflicts around the same. So they will have these kind of anxieties and they will land up in fights. So we first taught them how to handle that in the family. And then we worked with role clarity, moving the mother closer to the daughter. We focused on the mother daughter bond. We asked them to do some of the things together, some of the chores together, spending some good time. So we tried moving the mother closer to the daughter, and therefore, forging the bond that was missing. We educated the parents about adolescence and the fact that these are normal things that adolescents do, though culturally it is not accepted, but biologically this is normal what she has done. And we worked with parenting skills, that how to handle an adolescent and a young adult when these kind of issues comes in. We worked with positive reinforcements. We tried changing their pattern of punishing the girl to, positively reinforcing good behaviors. For example, if she did her routines, if she did her rituals, or if she bonded with the mother, there could be, reinforcements that goes towards the family. We worked with psychoeducating the family, that what is the connection of depression to the marriage, because the idea that they will marry her and she will be fine was directly connected to her depressive symptoms, because that is a cognition that was bothering her over and over again, that what if they marry me off right away, what will happen. So we created that psychosocial connection to the illness. All right. Also, we worked on trust building activities. We really, really had to work on this. They were not, they were like nearly put the daughter in a cage, you can say a psychological social cage. So we started asking the parents to allow the daughter to go for a walk alone, from one place to another within the hospital, and not follow her. We allowed asked the mother to allow her daughter the mobile for an hour, for playing games, for listening to music, some of the small small things. We say that slowly the trust has to start building. So, and it's two ways. We talk to the daughter also, that when you get the mobile, what are you going to do? If you're trying to attempt to call your friends or somebody, then obviously the trust will break. So, the two ways that trust, it goes both ways. If she goes out for a walk and tries to, run away, then obviously parents are not going to trust her. So we talked to both parties that, trust is a two-way road, that, you have to kind of do that to build it. So out of all of this, gamut of working with them for, 3 to 4 weeks, the outcome was that the parents went back home. They got her into the college that she wished to become a CA. She was very good in academics actually, and she wanted to become a chartered accountant. They got her in college and they delayed the marriage by a year. So one thing that we could, kind of talk to them is that can they at least delay it, because see, again, as therapists we cannot culturally, oppose them, that, you shouldn't, because then they will not connect to what we are doing in therapy. So at least the delaying of the marriage, till trying out that whether the daughter is being able to perform in her academics. If she is, let her be. If not, then at least you delay the marriage for a year. And the parents agreed, and they were under a very good follow up for, every 3 months, every 1 month we would be following them up. Okay, so that's what happened in the first case. In the second case, where, the 70-year-old lady, we kind of took sessions with the mother and son. We focused on building the lost bonds, where the son was encouraged to spend quality time with the mother. The designated time was to listen to her rather than telling her things. From the son's side, the son was designated the role of a listener, that listen to your mother, there's a designated time. So the mother also knew that she has to wait for it. She cannot unburden all her things the moment they steps inside the house and removes their shoes. She also has to wait for the time, but the mother and the son will sit for, say, half an hour or 1 hour, and he will listen to her and she will get that time. The role of the son was reframed from being a problem solver to an emotional caregiver. Okay, so the son, we realized, was coming from a point of view, I need to solve my mother's problems. But she didn't need him to solve her problems, she just needed somebody to listen to her. So we kind of, in the communication exercises, we kind of reframed his role from being a problem solver to being an emotional caregiver for his mother. And we also explored what roles can she take up in the current household, can she feel a little more purposeful. So this happened definitely together as a family, that what can she contribute to this family where she feels that I am also doing something. All right. And we figured out some of the things that all the family members felt that she can do. Again, try and understand, this was not a high conflict family, everybody's intentions are in right place, but they didn't know how to handle this situation. So they kind of came up with things that she can also contribute, not maybe in chores, but feel purposeful around the house. There was one session with the son and daughter-in-law to discuss boundaries, to adjust this change from a nuclear family to joint family. How do they still, so we felt that they felt the presence of the mother as a threat to their boundary, and therefore they're reacting to it. But we discussed about healthy boundaries, that even if the mother is present, it doesn't mean that you will, there will be a breakdown of boundary. You can still retain your, some of your boundaries even while she is in the same house. So we talked about that change, and addressing caregiver burden with both of them. So we worked on problem solving areas to overcome various stress related issues to this. So the lot of critical emotions that was present. So in this family, more than fight, there was a lot of emotions, negative emotions that was flowing. There was a reduction of that, and they did all of these things, and kind of they started feeling a little more bonded, they started feeling a little more emotionally at a better place for this family. In case 3, what happened, the child, the 8-year-old child, was connected to an individual therapist. He was allowed to speak there. The parents were provided marital therapy first. Okay, that was one tricky thing about this case, and that's the reason I put up. Just because there's a child and who has a problem doesn't mean that all family therapy needs to be done for all these cases. Sometimes marital therapy can also be done, because in this case there was a core marital issue. Once the discord was discussed and some progress was made, session then focused on parent management techniques. I'm sure you have done Dr. Jane's session where she has spoken about these things. So parent management techniques were handled, jointness in parents, where the parents start thinking together about the child, have the similar views. It was very difficult to bring them to similar views, but finally we had to, they also realized that they have to, if the child has to get better, they have to at least agree to some things that are similar. Deciding rules, routines, role allocations, all of this we brought in jointness. Positive reinforcement to shape behaviors. We had to really work to shift punishment to positive reinforcement in this family, that not the mother style where she is positively reinforcing bad behaviors, but not the father style also, that where he's punishing everything. So we taught that. And problem solving skills, this family was very low on their problem solving skills. We tried teaching them how to constantly problem solve for any issue that came up. All right. What happened in case 4 is, we first created a mutual understanding is therapy, that this is a unique family. Okay, that there is some uniqueness in all families, and this family also has a uniqueness because of the nature of relationship between the parents. We try to reframe the son's outrage as a meaning of communication, that he wanted to be understood and he wanted to be accepted within the family. There was already a push that go out of the family. He wanted acceptance first, then only he can leave. So the parents coming together because of this issue threatened his enmeshed bond with his mother, and he was trying to create, so we tried creating some healthy boundaries in this family. Role allocations was done. We encourage the father and son to communicate without the mother's presence. Now this was again difficult because of the mother didn't want to leave the father and son. She always wanted to mediate their communication because of her anxiety. So we actually had to ask the mother to step out for a walk for 1 hour when the father and son will be in the house, and let them do whatever they want, that is up to them, but encouraging the father and son to communicate things. There was couple session, because of this kind of a coming together, their discord kind of resurfaced. So they had kind of got into this understanding that we are separated, but now that they came together to help the child, their problem also kind of started erupting, where they started feeling revengeful towards each other. So those issues were discussed. So now the parents, what happened after therapy is the parents could function in a more healthy manner as co-parents, not as a couple, but we are parenting together. They understood that we don't have needs as a couple from each other anymore. We have moved on, but we are still parents. And the boy was symptom free till the therapy continued, and he had actually joined another course to upgrade his skills so that he can apply. So he started living alone in a PG in Bangalore, enrolled himself in a course, whereas his parents went back to Delhi, and they understood that they have to come down only to parent him. So that was a big movement in this case. All right. So this brings me to the end of the session. Can I have questions and queries if there is any? So you got a snapshot of what actually happens in therapy. You also got to speak and talk about family dynamics in those terms and understand family problems in those terms. Does anybody have any other questions and queries? Okay. In case the mother who lost her husband, no grief counseling is done. She had lost her husband many years back. Okay. So yes, Sheba, 1 minute. I'll allow unmuting, but you can take turns and unmute. You definitely, all of you can unmute and talk at this point of time. Grief counseling, her diagnosis was not associated with grief for her husband. She was not grieving. She was depressed because of the other issues that happened. So her husband had died a few years back. All right. So that's why no grief counseling was done. I had one more thing. So, family therapist scope is as good as the skills and the aspirations of the therapist. Um, I don't know how to answer this. Yeah, definitely we need to upgrade ourselves and the skills. Yeah, it's not a manualized thing that anybody can do. Definitely training and supervision is needed, required. Yes, true. Also, the cooperation of the family happens. But yeah. Um, Okay, somebody asks how long is the duration of family therapy, the lower and the upper limit. It's such a huge range. Some people actually, we have actually had a research article that says that, the dropouts that happens post intake can also mean that, many times we feel that, oh, it didn't work and therefore they didn't come back. It's not true. Many times, just one intake session where they just sit down together and talk to the therapist and give each other view, and if the therapist have been able to be neutral, that itself pushes some family to know that how to deal with their issues further. Okay, so one session itself can be as effective as to push family towards change. We have also had families who have been with us for years and years. All right, so some families just go on requiring sessions. So what typically happens is they might take a few sessions together, uh, get into a more stable position, and then maybe when they slide back and they come. However, we have seen that a gamut of 12 to 15 sessions around, spaced out weekly, kind of helps a family the best. Okay, that is the kind of average number of sessions that goes in. All right, so what about the mothers? Just a minute.
There's one more question before that. What could be the long-term solution for the adolescent girl's family?
What would be the long term solution for the adolescent girls family? See, that is the thing that sometimes in therapy, for some families we have to look at long term solutions. For some families it has to be short term enough to put the family to the next step and then the next step. Okay, so for this family it seems like they needed a time to try out that whether this girl is really academically flourishing or not. The long term ability for this family definitely needs to have a lot more the issues that I said of adolescence, the issue that we said about not being able to understand that these are normal needs for her. The parents have to understand that and provide her freedom. And obviously, hitting, beating, caging her up inside the house, these are unfair coercive means. So that needs to be, kind of talked about in the family. So if that goes hand in hand, where the girl is also able to progress academically and in her career, and she is mentally feeling well enough to be able to keep focus, the family can also we can work together in those things. All right, Shobita, will you just moderate the chats, because for
Yes,
mine it's
yes, yes.
just
I
going.
will read the question.
Yeah.
How about mothers who are insecure as the
Hmm.
son is happy with his family and the
Hmm.
daughter's families are not bonded?
How about the
Mothers
huh?
who are insecure to see their son who is happy with
Okay.
his family, while they feel the daughter's families are not bonded.
Daughter's family are not bonded. Their own daughter's family or
No, they're
daughter-in-laws?
talking about a mother-in-law who can't see her own son
I
happy.
got that. I got that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that is also, as you can see, it is. I think it's unfair to even blame the mother-in-law completely in that sense, because it's also a learned behavior that, when I get a chance, and it's also sometimes is the power hierarchy. If she had suffered when she was in her younger age, she might feel that now that I am a mother-in-law, it's like a prescribed role that as a mother-in-law you can do whatever you want to your daughter-in-law. So she also exercises that power over another one whom she can. Okay, as human beings we love power, we love exercising those. So in when we recognize that these kind of unfair means are happening, then we have to again take the developmental perspective, that as an aging person, what does she need in her life? Can she kind of reconnect her to something else, so that she loses that intensity of her focus on her daughter-in-law, or focus on her son and her son's life? So is there anything else that she can do? I know it is difficult, but if they have reached up to therapy, that might be a good way, because taking something away from an aged person without giving her something back is very difficult. You cannot take away a healthy relationship from someone without giving her another. So you cannot take the son away from the from the mother-in-law without filling up a void. All right, so there may be the developmental perspective of what the aging person requires. How does the person feel purposeful? What else can the person do? Is a discussion that will slowly take her anyways away from that family and refocus on those things.
Okay. The next question, in case one, the father's authoritarian style,
Hmm.
reconciling the relationship between her and the father. It's more like a observation that they
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah, yeah,
given.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, that would be something that would definitely be helpful in the longer run, that if the father and the daughter can sit together and be able to express that, that would be ideal, where the father understands. That had actually started, where there was one session where the father kind of broke down in the therapy session with the therapist, and he kind of understood the his own anxieties, where he's coming from. And post that, we surprisingly saw that he was much more milder and much more gentle with his daughter. All right, so that process had started, but that this can definitely be one goal in therapy in the long term. Yeah.
Next is a compliment for Tanya ma'am. Extremely resourceful session with real life examples and rich expounding. Appreciate your humble demeanor and sharing your expertise and experience.
Thank you so much. uh,
What about the therapy given for the child in case 3?
okay, case 3,
I
I
think they are asking about the individual session that the child was referred for.
okay, in individual session the child was referred to, as we were blessed to have a child and adolescent psychiatry, which kind of deals exclusively with children and adolescents. So there they were handling the child's issues. Now, as we know that we do not divulge information about what's happening in individual therapy into a family therapy and vice versa. So there the child was, I think, more or less, they were working with the alliance with the child to make the child be a little more, first some bonding, because as you could see, the child didn't bond with anyone in the family as of now. So with the therapeutic alliance, they were trying to make some progress in the child's behaviors, the targeted behaviors. Going to school was not the primary focus, more so was his anxieties about his parents' discord. What will happen if he leaves home, if he goes to school? That parentification that had happened, they were working with that material.
Okay. In power hierarchy, if father is authoritarian but mother is opposed, then it's an issue.
Hmm.
If she is accepting, maybe between them it's okay. Can you explain this point?
Yeah, so if you look at traditional families, even one or two generations back, it was like that. That is what I meant, that even if there was patriarchy and there was a power structure which was authoritarian, or even if we are not talking of patriarchy, even in matrilineal families, if the authority lies with someone, but the family accepts that. The family says that we are okay with this kind of a power hierarchy, and it is towards the welfare of the family, then it is fine, because it helps everyone in the process. Okay. But then the moment it is unfair to the people, that that kind of a hierarchy is not helping someone, or they are not feeling helped with that kind of a hierarchy, then I say that that becomes problematic in the family. All right. So one thing that we must understand is, as a therapist, we have to kind of be understanding of the cultural nuances. All right. So if a family, if they come from a more traditional based family, where everybody says that this hierarchy works for us, then as a therapist we shouldn't be pushing them for shifting that. All right. So we have to actually see that what is okay with the family within their cultural background. All right. So we shouldn't be challenging the whole culture itself. All right. So we have to kind of take that perspective.
There is a case that I have where one of the spouse has trust issues and the other spouse is having a dominating personality. It has been hard to work on them as they reset to the starting position, and it becomes a lot of work to bring them back and work with them. Had done personal and couple therapy together. Any suggestions on this?
Okay, one thing would be that if personal and couples therapy is done by the same therapist, I would suggest that that can change, because obviously it is not possible to do individual therapy and couples therapy by the same person. That itself might bring in some change to get a fresh perspective on either one. Either you do individual therapy and leave the couple therapy to be done by some other therapist, or you continue doing couples therapy and leave individual therapy for both of them with somebody else. Okay. And talk to that therapist to try and see what is happening. Okay. It's like a therapeutic consultation. That I would say would be the first thing that will come to my mind, that do that and try and see whether there is any change or not. Okay. Other than that, again, I would say then maybe seeking supervisory session or a therapeutic consultation will help us see an objective view, because something tells me that as a therapist there is some subjectivity that has come into this, and therefore the feeling of stuckness is there. So gaining some objectivity into the therapy case by discussing it with someone might help. Okay, Shobhita, the
I
one more
think,
question and we'll
yeah, I
move on.
think that also answers the next question.
Hmm.
Because the next question is also about, can we take individual sessions first and then joint session of all the family members?
No.
So I think we have pretty much answered all the questions.
Hmm.
We've been such a lively and a participant group, and it was so nice sharing what we know with all of you guys. Hope this helps, and if there's anything coming up, we will just keep you updated on that. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, Shobhita. Thank
Thank you,
you,
Tanya.
everyone. Thanks.